we're using our Yoseka nib log, and we're gonna see, is this nib actually writable? Hi everyone, it's Daisy from Yoseka Stationery, and today's video is on the Pilot Namiki Emperor fountain pen. This is Pilot's largest fountain pen with the largest nib available on any Pilot fountain pen. It's the number 50 nib, and we are going to be looking at the Pilot Namiki Emperor, discussing some of its features and specifications, as well as writing them out, since we do have these testers on loan to us from Pilot USA. So hopefully today's video will answer the question of, is this massive pen actually something that you can write with? And I hope that after watching this video, you'll be able to find the answer to that question. Okay, so let's take a look at the Pilot Namiki Emperor. I have two of them here on the tray in front of me, and the colors that they come in are vermilion, red, and black urushi. So these pens are quite massive. The length of these pens are 17.4 centimeters, and the weight of these pens is 48 grams. So just for reference, I will bring in some other more standard fountain pen sizes that you might have in your collection so that you can see for reference. So this is the Pilot Namiki Emperor, and this is a very Pilot starter fountain pen with a steel nib. This is the Pilot Metropolitan. Here's another Pilot fountain pen. It's the Pilot Custom 743, which is also the same size as the Pilot Custom 823. So this one is a very popular size, and you can see here much smaller than the Namiki Emperor. And I've also brought a Lamy 2000 here as well, which all of these pens are honestly sort of dwarfed by this Namiki Emperor. It just looks like these are like miniature pens next to this pen. But I hope that gives you a sense of the scale. For reference, I've also brought in some other oversized fountain pens, large fountain pens that are in the same sort of realm as this fountain pen. So we have, of course, the Namiki Emperor, and then we have, this is another Pilot. This is the Pilot Custom Urushi, which is a large pen in and of itself, but the Namiki Emperor is larger than that. And then from Sailor, we have the Sailor King of Pen, and this one is the King of Pen 1911. So you can see here, this is actually quite small in comparison to the Pilot Namiki Emperor, but the King of Pen is actually considered an oversized fountain pen. So the Namiki Emperor is really, really, really the oversized fountain pen of oversized fountain pens, if you will. I hope that little size comparison helped you get a sense of the size of this thing. So back to the Namiki Emperor and just some more information about that. The body of this fountain pen is actually made of ebonite. So that is why the weight of this fountain pen, even though it is a massive pen, like that's it, next to my head. It's the size of my head. It's a fountain pen the size of my head. Even though it is the size of my head, it does not weigh as much as my head does. It is about 47 to 48 grams, and the reason that it is on the lighter side for how large it is because the inside of this fountain pen is not metal, it's actually sulfurized rubber. So it is a rubber material that is then coated with urushi lacquer. So that's what gives this pen the very lustrous, shiny, polished look, is the application of layers of urushi lacquer on the surface of this pen. On this pen, the urushi lacquer has been mixed in with some pigment to achieve this very bright red vermilion color. You might be wondering what the fill mechanism is for this pen. That is a very common question when we think about large pens. People often think, well, it's a big pen, how much ink can it hold? This is an eyedropper fountain pen, which means that you can twist off the cap here, and the Namiki Emperor actually comes with an eyedropper, which allows you to suck up ink from a bottle and eyedrop it into the barrel here. So the barrel is hollow, and it has a capacity of about 1.5 full ink droppers from the ink dropper that the box comes with. So it's quite a lot of ink that this massive pen holds, and along with most eyedropper fountain pens, there is sort of an ink shutoff valve here that you twist off at the end. You don't twist it off, but you twist to open it to let the ink flow, and to kind of shut it off, you twist to close the ink shut-off valve. Let's take a closer look at the nib of this massive fountain pen. So here is a close-up look of the number 50 Pilot nib that comes on the Pilot Namiki Emperor, this pen over here. And you can see here it is a sizable number 50 nib. It is the largest Pilot nib. The artistic detail on this is it has the outline of Mount Fuji on it. It has the Namiki emblem there, and then it has the nib size, and it says 18 karat because this nib is an 18 karat nib as opposed to a 14 karat gold nib, which most other Pilot fountain pens are 14 karat, but these are 18 karat, so they are going to be a little bit softer. The back of this nib, if you flip it over, comes with a feed. Hopefully you can see this is a feed that is lacquered. So it's a plastic feed that comes on the Namiki Emperors, but it is lacquered to match the overall lacquer of this body. So this body is red lacquer, and so the plastic feed has been covered with a red lacquer as well. And on the black pen, the feed has been covered over with black lacquer. So this does look different from a typical feed. Here's the Pilot Custom Urushi, which does not come with a lacquered feed. And you can see here, lacquered feed, non-lacquered feed. So you can really tell the difference. It's just like a little, it doesn't add any functional difference. It just looks nice. So since we are talking about the number 50 nib and how large this nib is, I want to bring in some other nibs just so you guys can see the actual size difference that the number 50 nib has, because you can't tell what a big nib it is just by looking at it on its own. Okay, so here you can see on the left we have the Pilot number 50 nib, the largest nib. In the middle here we have the Pilot number 30 nib, which is a very big nib in and of itself. It's a huge nib, a very soft nib. And then we have the Sailor King of Pen nib, which is also considered a large nib, an oversized nib on an oversized pen. And these all look quite small next to this number 50 nib. So hopefully that gives you a sense of really how large this nib really is. I mean, it's like half of my hand, so it really is quite big. Okay, so now that we've looked at the Pilot Namiki Emperor, this massive pen, the question that might be in your minds is this massive pen actually usable? And that's what I wanted to know, and we typically don't have a tester of this pen available because it is such a luxurious pen, but shout out to Pilot. Thank you, Pilot, because Pilot USA actually sent us their testers. So we do have the broad nib available, the number 50 broad nib available to try out. So I'm going to be writing with it today. I'll show you all the writing sample. We're using our Yoseka nib log, and we're going to see, is this nib actually writable? Okay, so I'm going to use the black one, and this again is the broad nib. And before I start writing, I'm just going to open up this ink shut-off valve here to make sure we have a steady supply of ink. Okay, this is, this is going to take some getting used to. I will be honest, this is quite a large pen in my hand, and I'm feeling the weight of it a little bit, even though it's not exactly like a heavy pen for its size. And I'm having to adjust my letters a little bit too, because it really is such a thick, juicy pen, and we have it in the broad nib size, so I'm used to kind of squeezing my writing a little bit and writing quickly, but I have to space out my letters because they're just blending in with each other here. Okay, so I just finished writing with the Namiki Emperor broad nib, and I don't know if you can read my handwriting in my notes here because I'm really not used to writing with this pen. The nib is really very large, and to me, because of how long the nib is, it almost feels like I'm writing further away from the paper. I just wasn't used to it, to be very honest. This nib will definitely take a little bit of getting used to for anybody. I think with smaller hands, you'll really perceive that difference more than if you have larger hands. It almost gave me the feeling of when you're writing close to the edge of a really thick notebook and you're like writing at the corner and you kind of have to write lifting your hand, if anybody knows what I'm talking about. So it was a little bit difficult to write with because of how large that nib size was, but I'm not saying that it's not something that I might be able to get used to. What was interesting about this nib is that for how large this nib was, the number 50 nib, 18 karat gold, I was expecting it to be an extremely soft nib, which has been my experience with other oversized nibs, such as the Pilot number 30 nib, the Sailor King of Pen nib. The larger the nib, usually the softer the writing experience, the bouncier the nib is. And this number 50 nib was actually not too bouncy, which I think is interesting. I think it might have to do with the curvature of the surface of the nib and how the shoulders of the nib here are really, really curved. So if you think about how you're writing on like a really curved metal thing, it's gonna be a little bit stiffer than if it was less curved. That's just my theory, but correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure. It's interesting that it's not super soft, and I almost appreciate the fact that it's not super soft, because if I was writing with a super, super soft, bouncy, springy nib, on top of that whole thing where I'm also writing on a larger nib and I'm getting used to writing with this like added space above the paper, I don't think it would be a usable nib. But because it is like a little bit stiffer than expected, paired with that large size, it makes it more writable. But to be very honest, for my small hands, it's probably not my top choice for a luxurious fountain pen. So I wouldn't recommend this behemoth Pilot Namiki Emperor number 50 nib for somebody with small hands like me. And I'm 5 feet tall for reference, I'm very short. So if you are on the taller side, you have larger hands, then maybe this would be a pen that is worth trying out and seeing if you would like. It's not super soft, but it is really, really smooth. It has a very wet supply of ink that you can see throughout my writing sample here. You can see it because there are places where the ink is very light and there are places where the ink has pooled, and that is where the writing is more wet. And if you're just looking and scanning across this page, most of this writing sample is that darker color, so you can see most of the writing sample is where the ink has pooled, if that makes sense. So no matter where your stroke is or how your stroke is, you're gonna get a really wet supply of ink because this is just a very wet nib. So there you have it. That was the Pilot Namiki Emperor, Pilot's largest fountain pen with Pilot's largest number 50 size nib in 18 karat gold. It is a behemoth pen and a behemoth nib. A little bit too big for me, but let me know in the comments what you think. Like, do you really like big nibs? Do you think that you might be able to handle writing with something like this? I think that if you like fountain pens and you appreciate fountain pens, these pens are certainly worth seeking out to try out because it's something that I've never experienced before. And like I said, it's worth trying out because they are very unique. It was just kind of interesting for me to even know what it's like to write and have to adjust my grip for such a large nib. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope this video answered the question of, is this pen actually usable for you? Let us know what you think in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.